Hi, I'm making this video because it's time for us as South Africans to hear some hard truths. I've lived in South Africa for 20 years and I've chose to become South African. I've never for one single day regretted that choice because I love this country and I love its people. But one thing has frustrated me above all else. As our country falls apart around us, we don't seem to be able to find the courage to stand up for ourselves and say enough. So I'm here today to tell you enough is enough and it's time for a revolution. My name's Phil Craig and I'm going to be leading a new political party called the Referendum Party, which is going to launch on the 9th of November. And the Referendum Party is a battle cry. It's a call to arms. It's the start of the next chapter in our history. As South Africans, we've been shamed into silence. Being called racist has become a shock collar that's used to control us. We've reached the point where nobody wants to say the emperor is naked. Well, the emperor is naked. Our country is run by arrogant, incompetent, corrupt imbeciles. So Ramaphosa might be my president on paper, but in my heart, and in the hearts of many listening today, he is the lead clown in the world's least funny circus. Our government is a total disgrace, and in the Western Cape, the majority of us have never once in 30 years voted for it. And that government cannot and must not get a free pass just because it's black. And neither should the majority of black voters who repeatedly insist on electing it simply because they're too racist to vote for a party led by somebody of a different race. Non-racialism is a two-way street. And far too much of our focus in South Africa is on the past when it should be on the future. We seem to be unable to be honest about our past. Apartheid was a terrible policy, and for whatever my part was in it, I apologise without reservation. If I had the power to go back and make sure it had never happened, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I can't, and nor can anybody else. But I'm also sick of the endless lies that are peddled by those who want to shame their opponents into silence. Our problems didn't start in 1652. In many respects, the opposite happened. When the Dutch landed in Cape Town, they set South Africa on a trajectory that would see it become the most successful and advanced country on the African continent. I refuse to feel shame over that. I feel proud. Just as you must feel proud, whatever it is that your ancestors achieved. History cannot be simply reduced to good or bad. It's always both. Colonialism brought roads and railways, medicine and literature. It brought water and sanitation, electricity and food security. It brought schools and universities. I'll not watch silently on as the legacy of my ancestors who grafted to build Africa's most advanced country is reduced to nothing, and neither must you. We live in a democracy, and for that I thank the many people and organisations of all colours within and outside of South Africa who gave so much to make this our reality. And this includes Mandela's ANC. I respect that democracy, and therefore that voters in the rest of the country are entitled to vote for our government of clowns, if that's what they really must do. But I demand the same respect for the people of the Western Cape who've rejected those clowns, and we are entitled to democracy too. A clear majority of Western Cape voters support a referendum being held on Cape independence. A referendum will allow us to rid ourselves of the national government that most of us despise. It will allow us to once again begin building up our country rather than watching it being broken down. It will allow us to create a country where our children want to stay rather than one which they cannot wait to leave. But one man is standing in the way of the future that we want most. Premier Winde is refusing to call the referendum that will put the Western Cape people in control of their own destiny. Premier Winde is denying us democracy. If Ramaphosa is the clown, then Winde is the puppet. He leads a government which can't set its own economic policy, and as a result, 25% of us are unemployed. He leads a government which can't control its own police force. As a result, we're being murdered at the highest rate in the world. He leads a government which can't collect its own taxes. As a result, our tax money has been used to subsidise ANC corruption and incompetence in the rest of South Africa. He leads a government which can't control its own borders, which has watched helplessly on as 1 million people were legally settled land in the Western Cape in the last decade, and where we've then had to pick up the bill to provide services to those people instead of spending money on the people who were here legally. He leads a government which allows the clowns to make all the decisions. And when we elected him in 2019, he promised to fight for the control of policing and rail. He's failed. He failed because instead of calling a referendum and claiming our right to determine our own future, he chose to plead and beg the clowns to have pity on us. Well, it's time for the Premier to get off his knees. It's time for the Premier to tell the circus to leave town. It's time for the Premier to show that his primary allegiance is to the Western Cape people he was elected to serve. It's time for the Premier to call a referendum on Cape independence and let the people decide for themselves how their future must look. Sadly, Premier Winde doesn't have the courage to do what's required. So as the Western Cape people, if we want a referendum, we're going to have to use our votes to make him listen to us. And it's time for those who do have the courage to stand up. It's time to start demanding the future that we want, whatever names people might call us. It's time to build a future that our children are going to be proud of. It's time for the revolution. It's time to vote for a referendum on Cape independence. It's time to vote for the Referendum Party. If you want to join us at our launch on the 9th of December, you'll find the details at our social media platforms, which are at Vote Referendum, or you can visit our website, which is www.referendumparty.org. Thank you.